going to be changing out my front driver's side axle this morning. I've got a crack in the boot, which may or may not have been caused by me 2 weeks back trying to get the drop link off. So I've got the wheel off. The axle bolt actually is a 14mm bolt and comes off pretty easily. Before you go any further, tap the axle shaft until you see movement with progressively larger tools. If you're not getting anywhere tapping it with a sledge and maybe a socket or an extension, you may want to consider giving up. I had to replace the passenger side axle on my S60 last year, similar setup, and the axle would not come out of the hub, and I had to change tactics and take the hub and axle out together and replace both. So you can see here I've been able to get some movement. The shaft is 5 mils back from where it normally sits. So that's good news. The only challenge left is going to be to pry it out of the transmission, which can be very problematic. So we'll see how I do with that next. I'm about to take the 2 strut bolts off. They are 21mm nuts, and let's double check this, but I think they're 18mm. Yeah, they're 18 bolt heads. Let's get at this. Nuts are off. I'm going to tap these out. Put the nut back on. You can tap a little bit. Doesn't require much tapping as long as you're shaking at the same time. Okay. Comes right out. One. Okay. Morning. And shake again. Second one should come out. Normally I'd say be careful of the axle boot at this point, but for obvious reasons I'm not too concerned. I'm just going to take the axle, push this through. This bolt is almost out. Out. The nut with this bolt. 2 bolts are out. Make sure, this is kind of a hack job here, but this needs to come out, the ABS sensor. So next job is just to tilt this right over, being very careful with the ABS sensor, as I'm not doing, and then turn the wheels all the way to the left to alleviate the pressure on that ABS sensor. So I'm going to do that next. That's a lot better. Lots of slack, lots of space. And so you can see, here's what happens, right? Every time you take these struts out, oh, so now I got pressure on my brake hose. Fantastic. All right, well, you gotta be careful of that too, clearly. So I'm not totally destroying the brake lines. I'm just gonna take the strut right out of here to give me some more room, because it's so tight in this space. Since the drop link's already off, normally you'd have to take it off there. Since that's already off, it's just a matter of taking off these 3 nuts and you're good to go. I think they're 14s. Yeah. And again, normally I'd say be really careful of your axle boot as you do this, because when these 3 nuts come out, guess what the strut falls on? We don't have to worry. It is really difficult to get this out. Destroy something else. Honest to God. 14 fits nice. And that's coming out. Axle is out. Lots of room to swing it to the side. You need pry bars. I'm going to use a assortment of pry bars to get this done. So what you want to do okay, the key here is you want to exert equal pressure on both sides of the axle, right behind where it enters the transmission. So you'll see right now I've got a roofer's pry bar in there, and ideally I'd have a roofer's pry bar on both sides, squeeze at the same time, pry at the same time, pull it out. There's not that much space back there, so that's where it becomes a bit challenging. So I'm just going to put the camera down, and you can watch me curse and try and hopefully get somewhere. Having done this before on V40, it's an odd thing because you'll try one technique 1 minute, it doesn't work. You try it again 5 minutes later after hammering around, it works fine. So you really have to, don't give up. And I'll just make sure the car is well supported. So, putting this pry bar in lengthwise right now. In, pry bar's in, and it's moving around, so maybe I'll just use some leg strength as I try and push that out. Okay, hammer that in some more. While that's in, I'm going to hammer something in the side. There's something in there. There's room in here. How is that feeling? It's hard to get anything in there. Use a different style pry bar maybe up here. Sometimes it just requires, you gotta dislodge the circlip first. And once you've done that, getting it out becomes a bit simpler. There we go. All I did was put it in lengthwise, ham it around a bit. You see I shook it a bit, or tapped it in and out to help dislodge the circlip. And then, just like any other axle, you can see there's a clip at the end, and you've got to compress that clip for this whole axle to come out. It doesn't look to me like this is the first time this has come out, so that's probably why it was a little bit easier. Here's the crack. It looks like there is no grease in there. We'll look at it later more closely. I'm a big fan of just getting a Rec-Yard axle. I'd much prefer to go with something that I know was original OEM versus getting something aftermarket. I've only had one fail as a result of this approach, and it was just a matter of taking the axle back and getting another one. So far so good. So I'm going to put this on. First I'm going to obviously compare the old to the new, and this looks pretty good. I'm just going to lube up the end a little bit with some grease and then pop it in. That's what it looks like inside when the axle's out. This looks, originally I was thinking I should replace that seal, but I'm not even sure there is a seal there. It looks to me like that is a steel ring of some sort and not a rubber seal as I'm used to seeing. Anyway, I'm going to leave that as is and put the new axle in. Just a little bit of grease. There's no harm in doing this, just don't put too much on. Looks good. Someone online said let gravity do its trick, so make sure the circlip opening sits on top. So I'm going to try that too. Good idea. I never had trouble getting it back in. Can't purchase on this anywhere. There we go. It's in. Now, one important note. When you're yanking back and forth, do not pull on the inner joint because it'll pop right out and you'll have to take the boot off, put everything back together. Been there, done that. Axle back in, you just line up the splines in the hub. You'll know when you got it. Give you an idea when it's in. The axle shaft comes right through past the splines. You want to be careful how much you tighten this thing, because the specs are not huge torque-wise. So we've loosely put the bolt back on, and now I'm going to work on getting the strut back in. The strut only goes back in one way at the top. There's a specific orientation. You don't have to really change with that. So how did I do this? In like this. backwards. Line up the bolts. Put it up. And rest it on the tie rod. Have the 3 bolts at the ready. Resting down next to the axle, not cutting the boot. And as I said, it's nice to have a partner for this part, but if you don't, it still can be done. Just have the bolts ready and lift this up. You can reach your hand underneath to spin. Once you got one bolt through, thread it loosely. That should allow you to get another one through. Thread that loosely too, and then you should be good to go. Okay, that'll give you, I've put each of the 3 bolts on loosely, and that'll give me a little bit of maneuvering room down below as I muck around with the stuff here. Close to focus. Alright, bottom bolts in. Back on. You want weight back on the wheels. Takes. Second bolt back on. 1, 2. Don't go mental with the torque. I've torqued it down. Tight. Let's try that again. Good. That's done. Stick the ABS back in. Sorry. Who did this? But anyway, it's been doing the trick. It's fine. These 2 are torqued. Everything else looks good. Really clean these bolts up. Not today. The way I'm jacking up the car here is I like to put the jack stand right on the bolt of the subframe bushing, and then I'm putting a 2x4 right behind it. Disperse the pressure a little bit. So bolt is 30 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. It's 30. So we're looking for maybe here-ish. There we go. That's it right there.